Hari Om. Ajam nirvikalpam nirakaramekam niranandamanandamadvaitapurnam param nirgunam nirvishesham niriham parabrahmarupam ganesham bhajema parabrahmarupam ganesham bhajema. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste. Welcome to session 95 of Bhagavad Gita verse by verse. We have completed verse by verse study of 12th chapter. Today, we are going to revise the entire chapter. This revision class will be moderated by Sri Ullas, who is a senior student of Param Vedanta. If you are viewing all the classes on YouTube uninterruptedly, regularly, the full credit goes to Sri Ullas. At the end of session, we will have the chanting of Shiva Panchakshari mantra. Now, I request Sri Ullas to give us a brief introduction of today's class before our teachers commence the revision. Over to you, Ullas.
Sadashiv Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. As Venkateshji said, we have a practice that after a chapter is completed, we go through a summary of it so that we can remember what all we have learned in that chapter. So let me just give a brief outline of where we stand in the entire Bhagavad Gita journey. As we know, Gita is divided into 3 ṣhatkams, Prathama, Madhyama and Charam. The first 6 chapters make the Prathama ṣhatkam, in which Jiva svarūpa is talked about, and the importance of self-effort, prayatna, is talked about. In the Madhyam ṣhatkam, where we are right now, and we are culminating that with the 12th chapter, mainly Iśvara svarūpa is talked about, and anugraha, Īśvara anugraha, his grace is talked about. And in the Charam ṣhatkam, we will see Atma, Paramatma, Aikyam. So moving on to what exactly is 12th chapter about, it's a very small chapter if you look at it. And many times it is used for Parayanam by many people. Small kids are asked to learn it. It's a very sweet chapter also. It is about Bhakti and surrender. But not just because it is very small is why people are using it for Parayanam, but also because it contains the entire essence of Vedanta. What is Vedanta all about? It's about moksha. And what is moksha? Moksha means liberation. Liberation from what? Liberation from this world. For whom? Liberation is not for I, but liberation is from I. That sense of doership that we have. Now, what do we do to make sure that we get liberated from that? Those are the sadhanas that we'll be talking about in this chapter. So Bhakti Yoga is the title of the chapter, and mainly it is divided into 2 parts. The first 12 verses go through what all are the sadhanas required for us to achieve that moksha. And in the last 8 verse, it talks about how will it look like? How is that person who has done all these sadhanas? What are the characteristics of that person? So that we can actually know how we have progressed, etc. So we'll look at that. What is Bhakti Yoga? There has been a lot of misconceptions and confusions about Bhakti Yoga. And 12th chapter is greatly placed right after 11th chapter because it follows its thought process. In 11th chapter, Krishna gives Arjuna the Vishwarupa darshan. And by that, he develops a lot of bhakti towards Lord Krishna. You know, only when we know about a person is when we can develop reverence for that person. For example, if there is a child who is a great fan of cricket, but does not know anything about Sachin Tendulkar, then he would not have much bhakti about him. But if he is told about all the centuries he has scored, all the matches he has won for India, and so many other contributions that he has done, then automatically reverence will come. So in the 10th and 11th and all these chapters, we have seen a lot of Īśvara svarūpa has been discussed, and that has developed that reverence in Arjuna's mind. Then what is exactly Bhakti Yoga? It is that healthy attitude that he has developed for God, that surrender attitude. But is Bhakti Yoga a thing like there is a Jnana yoga. Sometimes people say, should I follow Jnana yoga or Upasana yoga or Bhakti yoga? But Bhakti yoga is not a standalone thing. It is a range of things. It's a package of sadhanas. Now, how do we understand about package of sadhanas? Let's just understand from our local example. Let's say we go to a sightseeing tour. Now, do we ask there whether do I need to do travel also? Do I need to do stay also? Can I not just do sightseeing? No, because all these three things we'll have to do to make sure we are able to completely enjoy the journey. We have to travel also, we have to stay also, we have to do then we will be able to do sightseeing. So in the same manner, in Bhakti Yoga also, there are three levels that are defined. And Bhakti Yoga is a composite of all these three: Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. These are all the three sadhanas. And actually speaking, these exercises really become sadhana when these are done under the atmosphere of bhakti. Otherwise, these are not even worthy of calling as sadhanas. Otherwise, these are just mechanical exercises. So bhakti environment only makes these things into sadhanas. Now let's quickly look through what exactly do we mean by these sadhanas as an overview before we get to the individual verses. Karma Yoga. Again, for our ease, it has been divided into two parts. One is level 1 and one is level 2. The level 1 is about making sure that we are able to get whatever we desire for our selfish interests. Many times people are looked down upon that, oh, you are working for your selfish desires and all, but there is nothing against that. This is the very basic stage. Everybody goes through that and there is no way out of it. So initially it is recommended that we all go through this, because what happens is if desires are suppressed and not met, then they are always lingering in our minds, and then one day that volcano bursts. So it is better that we go through this stage. And there is the first part of all the Vedas is anyway describing how we can get all this ṣhatkam karma done. The only thing that will make these ṣhatkam karma as karma yoga is that we should have that prasad bhavana. That whenever I do something, I don't talk about, oh, I did this, it is my glory. We say, I did my effort, and then whatever I receive, it is a prasad of the Lord. With that bhavana, once we start doing these karmas, we become slowly and slowly, our mind becomes purer and purer. But what happens over time is that we realize, for how long am I going to keep doing these selfish acts? When will I graduate from here? Then what happens is automatically we'll go into the level 2 of Karma Yoga, which is Nishkama Karma. Now I am thinking about the pain of others. Now earlier I had no time for working for others. I was so busy in my own pursuits, but now I would take time out of my schedule and work for others' pain also. And again, this is out of not self-interest, because again, if it is from self-interest, it would be ṣhatkam karma. It would be an investment rather than giving. So giving has to be without any personal desire, nishkama, without any one of my desire. And again, the bhavana has to be as if I am offering it to the Lord. It is again not that, oh, that hospital is in my name. Again, we are strengthening the I only, which is not our purpose. We want to get liberation from this I. So as long as we pursue the prasada bhavana and Iśvara arpana bhavana, that's how we graduate in this level. There is a famous mantra, na karmana, na prajaya dhanena, tyage naike amritattva manashu. How will we reach that amrit tattva? Not through any amount of karma, not through any amount of progeny or any amount of wealth, but only through renunciation, only through tyaga. And in some other chapters, it is talked about what is the difference between tyaga and dan. We will not go there, but tyag is the only way that we can achieve this. So what do we get out of the result of this stage? For any sadhana, we actually require an instrument. For example, if I'm doing some biological study, then I'm using a microscope. Similarly here, let's say we are using a lens. Here our instrument is actually mind. But for me to use a lens, I need to make sure that it is clean, it is clear. So Karma Yoga actually provides us that shuddhikaran of our instrument, which is the mind. The purity of mind is achieved by Karma Yoga. The only difference between level 1 and level 2 is that level 1 is like a local train and level 2 is like a bullet train. It will make us reach there faster. We can all start from level 1 but slowly graduate into level 2. Without level 2, it is difficult to continue doing the level 1 only. Then coming on to the next stage, which is level 1 of the Upasana Yoga. So we can consider it to be the level 3 overall, which is also called Abhyasa Yoga by Lord Krishna. If you see in Taittiriya Upanishad, it is said, Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam. Now, once I have clarified my instrument, what do I do with that? It is said that that subtle truth, that Amrit Tattva, is actually hidden in the cave of my heart. Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam. And in Katha Upanishad, it's also said, Paranchi Khani Vitran Swayambhu. That Lord has given us all the senses by which we can actually do any analysis. They are all pointing outwards. Now, this is kind of a contradiction that I actually need to look inside, but all my senses are looking outside. Then what do I do? So this Abhyasa Yoga comes to our rescue, in which we are told that, okay, you are right now very extrovert. You sit, you take some time out, and then you do your Ekarupa Ishtadevata Bhakti. What is an Ishtadevata? Rama, Krishna, it can be anything. We have every type of possibility available, whether it's a human form, animal form, mixed form, tree form, whatever is our liking, we can choose that. The whole idea is to make sure that we are able to focus inside. Instead of extrovertedness, we become introvertedness. So that is the Ekarupa sadhana. But again, what happens is once we continue, keep doing that, we soon start to realize that this is also very much limited. Let's say I am also doing Ekarupa sadhana and I feel that the goal of it is that Bhagavan would one day give me darshan. And somebody on the 10th floor is also doing the same sadhana. And we both are able to complete our sadhana at the same time. Now, where will Lord go? To my place or to 10th floor? The point is that this way, Lord is as if limited to time and space, which cannot be the truth. Then he will be subject to all janma, marana, and so many other things, which obviously Lord is not. So slowly again from this level 1 of Upasana Yoga, we will graduate into the next level. Here, now we are looking at Anek Rupa, Vishwarupa, in which we are not looking at only a single form as Lord. We get to know from 10th and 11th chapter that Lord is in everything and everywhere. Now there is no limitation of space and time. He's everywhere all the time. And this ultimately leads into the expansion of our mind. The tool becomes even larger. The mind is extended. The benefit of this is again that now I am not having any raga and dvesha, because everything out there is the Lord. Then what will I like and what will I dislike? So ultimately this again strikes onto my original problems, which were keeping me away from moksha, which were rag and dvesha, which ultimately lead into greed and anger and all. And they strengthen the I. So once my raga dvesha are gone, my anger is gone, my greed is gone, my I becomes slowly and slowly thinner and thinner. So this is again a very important step to reach there. But so the phalam of this stage is also is that now we become qualified for our next stage. And here, what is the qualification we get? That our clean tool is now focused on the right direction. Now I am actually able to make use of it wherever I want to make use of it. But these two are still saguna īśvara upasana with attributes. Initially, there was a form which had attributes. Now there is all the entire world, which also has innumerable attributes. But there is still a duality between I and the Lord, which we will have to see in the next stage. In the next stage, we will see what do we need to do. Jnana Yoga. This is the culmination of the entire Bhakti Yoga package, in which we are trying to inquire about our inner nature, our higher nature, which is the nirguna self. We looked at the saguna self earlier. Now this is for the nirguna self. Now what do we mean by inner nature, higher nature? For example, Swamiji keeps giving example that there is a man, and then there is a husband, there is a father, there is a son. The same man becomes all these three. all these three are as if the lower nature. But on inquiry, we find actually he's none of these. The higher nature is as if he's the man. Now, how do we achieve that? There are three process steps given. The first one is shravanam of scriptures. We continuously, consistently study over a length of time under the guidance of a competent guru. And then we continuously get to know all the features. Features is not appropriate word, but what all are not the features of Atma, for example. But for the simplicity, let us say what are the attributes of that Atma, we can call it for now. Then once we have done that shravanam, then obviously we will have some clarity about it, but there will still certainly be many doubts. So we need to sit and then clarify those doubts. And that step has to be done with a lot of shraddha. Not that by saying that, well, either use blind faith, or then I say, no, this is all wrong. We need to have shraddha that there is something which probably I am not understanding. So let me rethink. And soon we will once understand this. And the last step in Jnana Yoga is the sweetest of all. For example, they say that when we add sugar to the cup of coffee, it will not make the coffee sweet. You have to stir it. You have to make sure that every part of the coffee gets that sweetness. So now all the learning that we have done, it has to impact every part of our life. That is when we get the best output of Jnana Yoga. So the phalam of this stage is that now I'm not acting to become purna, to become fulfilled. Now I'm acting out of fulfillment. Now I'm free from all of my psychological hang-ups. And we can very easily check it with our old FIR principle, that how frequently am I still getting angry, etc. What is the intensity of that? How much time do I still take to recover? So these are all the stages of Bhakti Yoga. But now, as I was mentioning earlier, that 12th chapter is aptly placed just after 11th chapter, because there he was told that you should worship the entire world. But he has also heard this, that you should renounce that entire world. You should actually focus on the Nirguna Brahman. So now should I focus on Nirguna or should I focus on Saguna? Now that is a question that is troubling Arjuna, which is what he asks, and later on Krishna takes his sweet time to answer that question in great length. And Swamiji says that this is a very, very apt chapter in which there is not a word more, not a word less for its entire effect. So it is going to be very much enjoyable. Let's invite Srimati Aruna ji to take us through the first two verses for this chapter. Aruna ji, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Hari Om. So as Ullas has very eloquently expressed, this chapter 12 is a short one with only 20 verses. You've heard that before. But it's a very important, loaded one. It has been classified as a chapter dedicated to the topic of Bhakti Yoga. So Swami Paramarthananda says that this chapter is essentially the essence of the Vedas. It comprises the entire nectar of the Vedas. And that the first part of this chapter deals with Bhakti Yoga as a means to moksha. Next slide, please. Then he goes on to say, Swamiji goes on to say that Bhakti Yoga is not a particular distinct sadhana as we all imagine, but it is given to a group of spiritual sadhanas which culminate in moksha. And Ullas has explained the group of spiritual sadhanas very well. They are the first Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. Put together, these form Bhakti Yoga. The reason for this is that all the levels of sadhana have to be practiced in the presence of Īśvara Bhakti, or devotion to the Lord. Without Īśvara Bhakti, these cannot be called sadhanas. So in a sense, Bhakti or devotion is underlying the entire process of sadhana. In chapter 2, Bhagavan has completely explained to Arjuna the Vibhuti Yoga, or the pervasiveness of the self, that the self is the essence in a world of plurality. Bhagavan describes himself as the chief factor or the substratum without which nothing can exist at all or be sustained. So Arjuna here gets the intellectual conviction of what he has learned about the Vedas from a very young age. It is a total explanation actually of Nirguna Brahma. And in the next, in chapter 11, with the demonstration of the cosmic form of the Lord, the Vishvarupa Darshan or the Virat Rupa Darshan, Arjuna's experience of the Lord brings him to this age-old question. So let us look at verse 1 of the 12th chapter. It goes like this. Evam satata yuktaye bhaktastvam paryupasate ye chapyaksharam avyaktam tesham ke yoga vittamaha. So Arjuna is kind of confused actually. Who is a better, he asked Lord Krishna, who is a better seeker of the infinite? The one who devotes himself to the Lord in manifest or sagun form aspect, or he who with complete detachment meditates on the nirgun aspect of the divine? So this is a question which has been posed over the centuries. This sagun versus nirgun form has been the source of battles. It's a long drawn out kind of argument which still continues even to this day. So let us look at Bhagavan's reply. Next. Thank you. Bhagavan's reply is Maya Veshamano Yemam Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Parayopetas Me Yuktatamamataha. So Bhagavan does not answer this question directly at all. Swami Paramathananda says that this comparison between Sagun Dhyana and Nirgun Dhyana are not valid at all. In fact, he goes on to say that the question is actually wrong. Sagun Dhyana is the means, a stepping stone to Nirgun Dhyana. So this is a very important difference. So you cannot really distinguish between the two. Practice of Sagun Dhyana leads one to Nirguna Dhyana. So there is therefore no question of comparison. Bhagavan says that Sagun Dhyanis are very dear to him and Nirguna Dhyanis reach him. So he doesn't really answer the question very well. Next slide. However, Bhagavan lists three very important factors in this verse, which are critical for the process of Bhakti Yoga or for any yoga for that matter. The first one being fixing the thought on me, that is Bhagavan, or on him. Thought cannot just wander around the concept of the Lord. Thought has to delve and merge into complete thought of the Lord. The word aveshya indicates not only thought contact, thought penetration, going very deep into the thought of the Lord. The second condition listed by Bhagavan in this verse is that the devotee must have the balance to exercise self-control while worshipping the Lord, self-restraint. The mind by its very nature is chanchala, and therefore the art of keeping the thoughts balanced at the point of concentration is called self-control or self-restraint. True Upasana is turning the mind inward to the truth or to the self. So this is basically very, very steadfast worship. Lastly, supreme faith, Shraddha, is required. It is not blind faith or blind belief, but the belief in something I know so that I may come to know what I believe in. This is the requisite for knowing Bhakti Yoga. So these three factors are the mark of a true devotee, and the entire process is called Bhakti Yoga. Hari Om. Thank you.
Thank you, Arunaji, for such a great explanation about the first two verses. So we saw again, the question was Saguna versus Nirguna. And as Arunaji also explained, this comparison itself is absurd because it is generally comparison is done between two equal things, like whether should I have sambar or chutney, not between whether should I have the container for sambar or sambar. So that comparison itself is absurd. And generally, Nirguna Bhakti is harder because we have a lot of body identification. So we give attributes to everything. So unless we drop that identification or at least graduate towards that, the Nirguna Brahma Upasana is always going to be harder. And it all depends on how prepared our mind is. So the Upasana, yoga and all are very helpful in that. Now let us look at in detail what all are the sadhanas that were explained to Arjun by Sri Krishna. Dr. Komal, can you please illustrate those? Thank you.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Lord Krishna presents Bhakti Yoga in 5 levels. Ulasji nicely explained, and I will be again going through in the order from the 5th level to the lowest rank as Sri Krishna explains. Sri Krishna says those who are anchored in Nirguna Iśvara Jnanam will attain him, undoubtedly. But in order to arrive at this level, one will have to accomplish previous 4 steps. Sri Krishna encourages Arjuna and through him all of us to recognize at what stage we are in and then elevate using Bhakti. The 5th and final level of Bhakti Yoga is nothing but Jnana Yoga itself. So we should remember Jnana Yoga is the highest and final level of Bhakti Yoga. And here the Lord that is worshipped by me through this level of Bhakti is not Saguna Iśvara, but Iśvara in his original nature, which is Nirguna Brahma. In Jnana Yoga, I am worshipping Nirguna Iśvara, and the worship of Nirguna Iśvara is also a unique worship. It's in the form of the very study about Nirguna Brahma. The very inquiry is in the form of worship. The inquiry consisting of Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Systematic study, gaining the knowledge, converting it into conviction, and assimilating this wisdom that alone is puja. And what I am offering here, I am offering my ignorance into the fire of knowledge. Therefore, Jnana Yoga itself is the form of worship I must practice. And this Jnana Yoga form of worship, which is the 5th and final stage, is presented by Lord in 3 verses, verse 3, 4, and 5. It is Jnana Yoga form of Bhakti Yoga. The word Krishna uses is Aksharopasana. Aksharam means Nirgunam Brahma. Upasana is Shravana, Mananam, Nididhyasanam. And the Jnana Yogis are called Akshara Upasakas. Having talked about this Akshara Upasana, Nirguna Brahma Vichara, Lord Krishna openly admits and confesses that Jnana Yoga is extremely difficult. The reason? Because the Lord I want here to worship is not available for objectification. The Lord is not available for mental conception, imperceptible, unconceivable. And how can I worship or even study? Because my intellect is used to objectification, and therefore an objectifying instrument will find it difficult to conceive of an unobjectifiable Brahman. And it can be ultimately received only in one form. And what is that form? That Brahman is Nirguna Vastu, is not objectifiable. Not because it is not existent, but because it is in the form of myself, Soham. That's called Soham Dhyanam. Sa means Nirguna Brahman. And Aham means I am. I am Nirguna Brahman. Soham. Next in verses 6, 7, and 8, Lord Krishna is coming one step lower, 5th step to 4th step. That is Saguna Iśvara Upasana. Meditation upon Iśvara with attributes. Here Swami Paramarthanandaji divides again into Saguna Iśvara into Vishwarupa Iśvara Upasana and Ekarupa Iśvara Upasana. Krishna says, hey Arjuna, these Vishwarupa Upasakas are special to me. But Vishwarupa Upasana is also quite difficult because it requires an expanded mind. I have to expand my mind to accommodate the whole universe as Iśvara, which means I should never have raga or dvesha. I should be willing to accept every part of creation as divine. Therefore, I should not complain against anything. It's extremely difficult because of this. So in that case, what to do? If you are not able to fix the mind firmly on me, Krishna says in verse 9, then seek to attain me by means of Abhyasa Yoga. That is Ekarupa Iśvara Upasana. Choose a personal God. Suppose here also a person says, hey Krishna, I am not fit even for Ekarupa Upasana also, because it's a mental activity. And I am Rajasic. I can't make my body, physical body passive. Some people will have difficulty even to sit in a place for Rajoguna Pradhana person who is an extrovert will have difficulty even with this. So if Arjuna, you are an extrovert, so then you need not sit in meditation. Go for karma, life of activity, life of dynamism. Matkarma paramah bhava. May you be committed to a life of activity. And here also, what are the two kinds of activities? One is nishkama karmani, paropakara karma, activities dedicated to the service of society, taking the very society as Iśvara. But a person may argue that I can't even do that nishkama karma because I have countless desires in the world. It is not wrong. You need not feel bad about it. Because any unfulfilled desire in the mind, it will create a bug. Therefore, what to do? Fulfill them. Whatever you want to eat, eat, but do it legitimately. But so what's the last step? Krishna says you may be committed to sakama karma also. But he gives a warning. When you are enjoying the benefit of your selfish action, don't call it karma phalam. Do not call accomplishment as yours. Take it as Īśvara prasada. And once you take everything as Īśvara prasada, even selfish action will have the capacity to purify the mind. So, sakama karma pradhana karma yoga. If you practice this karma yoga for the length of time, I will graduate to the second step, in which my life will become nishkama karma pradhana karma yoga. So gradually we'll ascend the ladder. We'll get a spiritual desire, mumukshutvam, and go further in the ladder of this bhakti. So these are the 5 stages of bhakti yoga. Now in the next slide we see the 12th verse, Sri Krishna wants to conclude this discussion of sadhana like this. He says, knowledge is indeed superior to meditation without knowledge. Meditation without knowledge is superior to mere knowledge. Renunciation of the results of action is superior to meditation. There is peace soon after renunciation. So in this verse, Lord Krishna talks about 4 types of sadhanas: Abhyasa, Jnanam, Dhyanam, and Karma Palatyaga. Abhyasa is knowledgeless meditation. Jnanam is meditationless knowledge. Dhyanam is meditation plus knowledge, a pair, mixture. And 4th is Karma Palatyaga, which Krishna has already spoken about in the 11th verse. So in previous list, Krishna gave Karma Palatyaga as the lowest, but here he plays a mischief in calling this as the highest one. But what we have to remember, even gyani will have to do a tyaga. That is one aspect. And second thing is, Sri Krishna wants every student to be appreciated and encouraged to go further. That's why he says Karma Palatyaga is the highest in this verse. And then what's the consequence? Shanti. After Tyaga, you get Shanti, peace. Samatvam yoga uchyate. Siddha siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. So Tyagat Shanti Anantaram. Anantaram means immediately Shanti comes. So with this, Krishna concludes the Bhakti Yoga Sadhanani. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Komal. That was an excellent description of the Bhakti Yoga. And as we saw that Krishna also talks about the importance of the first step. The first step, like Tyaga, Karma Phala Tyaga. Now, next what he talks about, as we have seen several times earlier also, that he's a great marketer. He wants to tell that if you do these things, what is it that you are going to get? All the benefits of it, all the phalam of the Bhakti Yoga that we will discuss in the next presentation. What is the benefit of telling all about that? One, we get excited about doing it, looking at all the benefits. Second, we get to know, okay, all these are the characteristics of a person who finally achieves Bhakti Yoga. Then maybe if we are in the initial stages, we can fake it to make until we have made it. For example, if it is told that you become compassionate for others, so maybe I don't have to wait for my entire Bhakti Yoga to finish and then I would become compassionate. But I can start faking it, for example, and then slowly it will get into my psyche. And that's how I can make progress there. And it also gives us that belief that this is all possible while living, because he's talking about the characteristics of a parabhakta. And this is not a dead person. This is a live person. So we can also achieve it while we are living. So that's a great hope. And on our journey, we can always analyze, where do I stand in this journey? Every time we can have that dipstick with us. So Dr. Sanjay, kindly help us to understand what all are the characteristics of this Parabhakta once he has achieved the Bhakti Yoga, all the 5 levels of it. Dr. Sanjay, please.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. I'm going to describe the verse 13 to 19th of chapter 12. After a person goes through the 5 stages of Bhakti Yoga, which is Sakama Karma Pradhana Karma Yoga, Nishkama Karma Pradhana Karma Yoga, Ishta Devata Upasana, Vishwarupa Upasana, and Nirguna Iśvara Upasana, he becomes a Parabhakta. According to the Taittiriya Upanishad, he will know first Ekarupa Iśvara, Lord with one form. Later, Vishwarupa Iśvara, the very universe itself. And finally, the formless Iśvara, which is truth behind the formed universe. Thus, he becomes the Sthira Prajna. In the following verses, Krishna wants to talk about how much such an Advaita Gyani conducts himself, which is Parabhakta Lakshanani. The most important trait is that he does not hate anyone, Sarva Bhutanam Adveshta. Now he loves everyone, and the distance between people comes down. Bhagavan says, Gyani tu atmaiva me matam. Arjuna, Gyani is not close to me. Gyani is me, and I am Gyani. Adveshta sarva bhutanam maitraha karunah evacha nirmamam nirahankaram samadukka sukha shami. He is Adveshta. He does not hate anyone. He's friendly and compassionate. Nirmamaha, without any ownership or having mind notion. He's Atma svarūpam, and he lacks mamakara. He's nirahankara. He's equanimous, well poised in sukha and dukkha. And the last quality, he has shama or titiksha. He does not react by anger to harm violently by words or action. My devotee is a non-hater of all beings, is friendly, compassionate, free from mind notion and free from I notion. Same in comfort as well as discomfort and forbearance. Santushtaha satatam yogi yatatma drana nishchayaha mai arpit manaha buddhi yaha makta bhakta saha me priyaha. Santushtaha does not lack anything in life, both psychologically, intellectually, knowledge or emotion. Has purnatvam, atmaneva atmanaha tushta. He's always satisfied. Yatatma, an integrated person. Maya arpito mano buddhi, the one whose emotional personality and the rational intellect are directed towards me. That devotee of mine, whose mind and intellect are fixed upon me, and who is ever contented, tranquil, self-restrained, and with clear knowledge is dear to me. Yasmatna udvijite lokaha lokatna udvijite cha yaha harsh amarsh bhaya udvege mukta yaha saha chame priyaha. Yasmat lokaha na udvijate. Gyani is one who does not disturb the world, which means that he always is aware about the surrounding, sensitive and understanding. Harsh amarsha bhayo dvega ajasmat lokana udvijite. Amarsha means intolerance. He by whom the world is not disturbed, who is not disturbed by the world and who is free from elation, envy, fear, and anxiety is dear to me. Anapeksha suchihi daksha udasin gat vyataha sarva aramba parityagi ya matbhakta samah saha me priyaha. Anapeksha means one who is free from all expectation. Udasina, neutral and not a pakshpati or is impartial. Gata vyataha, the one who is free from sorrow. Sarva aramba parityagi, the one who has given up all the aramba, Aramba means binding action. Karma bandha karmani. That devotee of mine who is independent, pure, resourceful, efficient, impartial, undisturbed, and a renouncer of all action is dear to me. Yah na hirashyati, na dveshti, na shochati, na kanchati. Shubh ashubh parityagi bhaktaman yah sah me priyah. Shubh ashubh parityagi, the one who has given all punyam and papam, such as bhaktiman, he is dear to me. The devotee who is neither rejoices nor grieves, neither desires nor hate, he gives up good and evil, is dear to me. Samaha shatro cha mitre cha tatha man apamanayo sita ushna duk sukh dukkeshu samaha sangha vivarjita. Shatru mitre cha sama. One who has same attitude towards a friend and a foe, he is compassionate but not accepts wrongdoing. Mana apamanayo, equanimous with respect to manam, honor and dishonor. Sitoshna sukh dukkeshu, the dvandvas of life are acceptable to him equally, and he is not attached to good or bad in life. He is the same towards friends and foes as well as in honor and dishonor. He is the same in cold and heat as well as comfort and discomfort, and is free from attachment. Tulninidda ninda stuti mauni santushtiyen kena chit aniket sthirmatihi bhaktiman me priyah narah. That devotee who is the same towards censure and praise, who is a person of limited speech, who is contented with anything, who is homeless, and who has firm knowledge of the self, is dear to me. With this verse, Krishna concludes the description of a wise person whose conducts and characteristics are sthirmatihi. A person with limited speech is a sannyasi. Aniketa, can live anywhere and knower of the self-knowledge. Such a person is dear to me. Hari Om.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjay. Dr. Kiran, can you please help us with the final verse of this chapter in which the glory of this analysis is talked about? Dr. Kiran, please.
Thank you. Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. The one who has completed all 5 levels of Bhakti yoga, he will be called a Jnani. Such a person will have that samatvam or equipoise, which is called as Sthita Prajna. Everybody wants to have this. Naturally, we will ask, is there a shortcut to this? Lord Krishna answers here emphatically, no. Hetu dharma amrutam idam yatoktyam paryupasate shraddha dhane mat parame bhaktaste ativa me priya. He says, those devotees who keep me as primary goal and those who pursue this in a righteous and immortal teaching as mentioned above are very dear to me. Next slide, please. So let us first go to Padartha or word meaning. Amrutam, here, that teaching which leads to immortality. So Gita is a moksha shastra. It is not some ritual book or some, somebody says holy book, I'll keep in the, puja room and worship. No. Like Upanishad, it is a pramana, which is used to attain that ultimate happiness, which is the ultimate purushartha or shreyas. And Lord says, dharmya, that is, this is in line with dharma or vedas. It is not some his own creation or his own theory. So it has come from time immemorial, unchanged, and this is what it is. And everybody has to follow the same way under a competent guru. And hence, those who follow, how to follow this with Shraddha, not like ritualistic, okay, I will worship it, and so on. Or, with suspicious, if gurus give some say something, why he has some hidden agenda. That is not the way one should do. We should follow this with shraddha and truthfully, and keeping Lord as the ultimate goal. That is, we should be mumukshu. We should not use God as means. God is the goal here. It is not like, you give me a good job and afterwards, rest of the life, I will take care of it. I know how to do it. This is not the way. Ultimately, whatever we do in our life, it should be to reach the God, and He is our ultimate goal. Such a person is dearest to me, ativa priya. That means he is expanding what he told in the 7th chapter, that is Udhara Sarva Evata. All these devotees are certainly noble, but that Gnani Bhakti who with a steadfast, that is steady mind, chooses me as his goal is the highest one. Next slide, please. So once we have attained Chitta Shuddhi with Karma Yoga, we will be eligible for Upasana, or to quieten our mind. Here, Yoga Rupa, Eka Rupa, that is, we worship one, then we graduate to many. That is why many of our holy places, there is a combination, like Kedarnath as Badrinath, Tirupati as Kalahasti, and so on, Kashi and Rameshwaram. That is why it is in combination. And even we worship Kailash as, mountain, or Tiruvannamalai as hill. We worship Ganges, the water, so that we should expand our mind and become eligible for the Jnana Yoga. Next slide, please. How this Jnana benefits. This is a very important, and Swami Paramarthanandaji emphasizes in this chapter very much. The benefit of Jnanam is removal of the ignorance. So ultimately, what is that ignorance which we all suffer? That ignorance is that we forget that we are Purna, or we are complete. So we think that we are incomplete. There is some kore or some lacking in us. And because we get identified in our ignorance with our body. And so I am hardly, 5 feet 1. So I see a 6-footer. I think that person is more complete than me, and I want to become like him. I do exercise and so on. And I see somebody fair, I put on a makeup. So this voidness causes man to become action oriented. And once he gets some result, he becomes obsessed, or he has a with that result. He thinks it has happened to him. That is the tragedy. So whatever result has happened, he does not, he forgets the contribution of the God. He thinks he has only achieved. I've built a palace, I've done this, I've done that. Even one grain of sand in that palace, he cannot manufacture on his own, because it is available only through God. And he gets caught in this circle. So once he knows that he is complete, then there is no need for any external factor to complete him. So he is Purnam, he has no desire. Just like an ocean, if a wave comes and rises above, the ocean doesn't feel, oh, that wave is going out of me, and feels sad. And it comes back, he doesn't feel proud and happy. He knows that it is all occurring within his realm. And he always knows that he is Purnam. That is the whole phalam of this Jnana Yoga. Next slide. Here, Nirguna Bhakti is highest. But this graduation where you do one and get some degree and go to the next. It is a process of gradual maturation. Even though it is given in a stepwise, we can do all 5 together. And then one by one, we can mature. That is what he mentions. And what is Nirguna Upasana? Once I went to my friend's house. He has put on empty frame and is worshiping it. I asked him, what you are doing? He is telling, I'm doing Nirguna Upasana. Even though this looks silly, there is a whole lot of religion and other following which is doing the similar thing. They say, my God is formless, but they break idols. What a tragedy this has become. So Nirguna Upasana is knowing and understanding God as the ultimate goal, and finding out what it means under the Guru, Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasana. There can be no shortcuts to this. Next slide, please. Initially, Arjuna asked, Evam Satyutakta. A Bhaktastan. So which is better? Is Eka Rupa Upasana is better or Nirguna Upasana is better? As we have discussed this, the question itself was wrong. Each Bhakta is in his own way doing his job. A person doing Eka Rupa Bhakti properly is better than one who is doing Aneka Rupa Bhakti improperly. Hence, Lord Krishna says each Bhakta is his favorite from their own standpoint. Etame Priya. Iti Tat Sat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kiran. That was again wonderful and very descriptive way of explaining this verse. And really loved the fact that we just talked about that. Again, to revise that this whole comparison is absurd. So in Vedanta, the great thing is that the questions are not answered. The questions themselves are dissolved. So that is what all the great teachers do for us. And the other things that we saw Dr. Kiran mentioned was that God has to be treated as the end, as the goal itself, and not as a means that we sign a MOU with him that you get me this and then I will get you that, and then we can go to the next stage. But rather he should be the end goal. In fact, for moksha and liberation, as we have seen many times, that the goal is to reach God, and at the end, the final stage is actually realizing that he is not other than me. Aham Brahmasmi. I and that Lord is the same. That is the final goal, and that is what Jnana Yoga and Nirguna Upasana will take us to. Now, just as a conclusion, we saw that the question was absurd, but here again, all the 5 levels were discussed, and many times we see that this is a lot of repetition. But in Vedanta, the teaching is generally the same. But what happens is, Swamiji says that we are not the same all the time. Maybe the first time when we heard it, maybe we were not fully focused. Maybe next time when we heard, we were a little disturbed, our mind was elsewhere. Maybe the third time when we heard is when we are paying more attention. So repetition is the key, because teaching being the same, the effect on us is different because our starting points are different. So let's just again look at it. There are 2 ways of looking at any teaching, is bottom up or top down. Here Krishna takes top down approach, that he goes from for example, a cricket coach would say to a bowler, okay, you try in swing bowling this way or out swing bowling that way, and then says, no, I cannot do that. All right, you just try to bring your line and length fine. No, I cannot even do that. Okay, so you first focus on your run up and how your body should be placed when you're, how your shoulders should be. So go step by step. If you cannot achieve a certain level, then you go down. If you can, again go down. If you can do this, then you go up. So like that, there is a calibration, there is a means for every maturity person. Wherever you are and on that ladder, you can start your journey from there, or else anyway the initial steps are mentioned. So the first 2, karma yoga, will clarify, will cleanse your mind, our mind, the chitta shuddhi will be there. The second one will focus our attention, will expand our mind, and then the third one will actually tell us about our higher nature, will tell us that we and Lord are not different, and ultimately enjoy that in every interaction in our life. As if we are in every sip of our coffee, we enjoy that sweetness of the sugar. And then at the end, we can again do this self-test that, okay, now that I am going through these stages, or I've gone through these stages, where do I stand? What are the areas of my work? As Dr. Sanjay mentioned, there are so many qualities of a Parabhakta. In which of these qualities, maybe in some of these qualities we are doing great, but there might be certain which we are still need a lot of work to be done. So my urge to you would be, let's pick 2 or 3 traits, and then what are the things that I can work on in the next 2 weeks or a month, and that way we can steadily make progress there. So this is a very, very practical chapter, very, very sweet chapter, in which we get to know the entire essence of Vedanta. We get to know what we need to do, what is the end goal, how does it look like, how can I make myself accountable and check. So this is a great culmination of Bhakti Yoga and Madhyma ṣhatkam. The next class will be on 2nd May, which will be Disha session 7. Disha, as we know, is a repetition that we are doing to make sure that our learning is strengthened, that we are able to implement these things in our lives, and not that we have read it once and then sometimes we tend to forget. So this is reinforcing all that learning. And Dr. Anupama will give us the summary from verses 47 to 53 of chapter 2nd from Gita. So now let us invite Srimati Meenakshi and Srimati Shweta, which will chant the melodious Shiva Panchakshari Stotram. Srimati Meenakshi and Srimati Shweta, please.
Nagendra Haraya Trilocanaya Bhasmangaragaya Maheshwaraya Nagendra Haraya Trilocanaya Bhasmangaragaya Maheshwaraya Nityaya Shuddhaya Digambaraya Tasmai Nakaraya Namah Shivaya Mandakini Salila Chandana Chachitaya Nandishvara Ramathanatha Maheshwaraya Mandara Mukhya Bahu Pushpa Supujitaya Tasmai Makara Mahitaya Namah Shivaya Shivaya Gauri Vadanabja Vrinda Ashakaya Srinilakantaya Vrishatvajaya Tasmai Shikaraya Namah Shivaya Vasishta Kumbho Bhagavagotamarya Munindra Deva Chitashekaraya Chandrarkavaishva Naralochanaya Tasmai Vakaraya Namah Shivaya Yaksha svarūpaya Jatadharaya Pinakahastaya Sanatanaya Devyaya Devaya Digambaraya Tasmai Yakaraya Namah Shivaya Panchaksharamidam punyam Yah pathe Shiva Sannidhau Shivalokam Shivela Sahamodate.
Thank you, Meenakshi and Shweta, for a melodious and divine rendition. We all know Meenakshi very well, but not Shweta. Mrs. Shweta Gurudat is a successful women entrepreneur. She is also a talented singer. Thank you, Ullas, and all the teachers of the day for a wonderful recap session. Next Friday, on 6th May 2022, we will continue study of Mundakopanishad. On Monday, 2nd May 2022, let us log in for Disha 7 at 6:45 p.m. Until then, Jai Sri Krishna. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavachishyate. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om.